So as a reminder, if you look down below the video, we've got in the description, we got the index of the chapters of this video. And we got if you go to the HTML index, I've got the index goes back like 3 years. So you can find out what we've been doing. You can just search it up. If you want to know about GPS or motor control, you can search that and then tie it back to finding a video to watch that we may or may not have discussed on here. So let's see, with that out of the way. So last week I said I was playing with Micro-ROS, trying to get that stuff to work, and Al was playing with it under Platform IO. I was trying to get it to work under Arduino. And one of the first things I tried was I went to there's a tutorial which it's an official tutorial that's supposed to be Teensy under Arduino for Micro-ROS. And I went through that and loaded the whole thing up. And I click compile and it says, I can't find your compiler. It either said it can't find it or it says can't find the path to this compiler. And I didn't know what to do with that. Maybe it was a simple thing. Maybe I just had to change the path somewhere and say, oh no, it's really over here. Or maybe I just needed to load something and fix that. So anyway, I moved on from that. And then that was, I think, the state I was at on our last meeting. Then after that, I did some poking around. And I think I went on to I took I think that tutorial and just carefully went through each step and says, well, here's what I really need to do, and tried to think it out real hard. And I loaded the Arduino 2.3.4. So it's the new generation of Arduino IDE. I loaded that. And then I loaded, I did some picking and choosing and picked up the Teensy Arduino install that I thought I wanted. And I put the whole thing together. And when it was all done, I believe it did not work. It was coming up and saying something about undefined reference to, no, I forgot what it's called again, to locale C-type pointer. And I thought, well, that doesn't mean anything to me. I went and looked, and there's hundreds of people out there complaining about the same kind of thing on Micro-ROS. And the answer from Micro-ROS is always, oh, it's something to do with your compiler versions have to match between something. And say, here, check these versions, blah, blah, blah. And usually people just go away. They realize it's not going to work. And somewhere along the line, people kept talking about, I'm at this situation, it doesn't work. And one guy just happened to say, oh, by the way, I got it to work. I just simply downgraded the Teensy Arduino installer from 1.59 to 1.57. So that's just, when you load this stuff in, that's different versions of the stuff that Teensy has made up running on the different versions of Arduino that they've made up. And then you got the Micro-ROS in multiple versions, and you got to apparently get this stuff to match. So anyway, I took his advice, and I figured out how to uninstall the Teensy Arduino 1.59, which is the latest stuff, and then said reinstall the 1.57, which is the one the guy said worked. And I was thinking just doing that, it started working, and I was really happy at that point. And then later on, I'll point out that shouldn't have fixed it, but it did. So I posted to Slack that I got it to work, and I was pretty happy with everything. And then I think the next thing was I decided, well, I should try to install this somewhere else. And the laptop is running Foxy, and it should have been running, say, Jazzy or something newer. And I thought, well, I should install it on my Raspberry Pi. I've got a Raspberry Pi 4 that has Ubuntu 2404 and Jazzy loaded on it. I thought, well, there's a clean install right there. I could try loading everything on that. So I sat down in front of the computer and sat down in front of the Raspberry Pi 4. And I thought, well, I'll install the Arduino IDE. So I tried that. I went and clicked on the things, followed the links, and loaded it up, and it just would not run. I wasted about an hour on that. What could possibly be wrong? And then it hit me that, oh, I was downloading the code for the x86 AMD 64, and I should have been downloading code for the ARM 64. So I thought, okay, I'll go look for that. And a little poke, and somebody come up and says, oh, this will not run on a Pi because they do not have a release for ARM processors. Thought, well, that's real handy. So I gave up on that. And then they said, what you should do is install the latest version 1 IDE, and that happens to be 1.8.19. So I went through the steps, and I found, yes, you can get the ARM install for that. I put it on so I can get that to run on Raspberry Pi. and it seemed to be, just a typical install. And well, the next step is you have to install the Teensy Arduino installer, which then lets you talk to Teensy packages. And it just occurred to me that's probably going to have the same problem. Is it an AMD 64 or an ARM 64 version? I said, well, I don't want to fight with this all night, so I finally gave up on that. And then I think that was right before the Homebrew Robotics ROS meeting on Tuesday nights, and so I just gave up on it and moved on and went to their meeting. And I asked there about Micro-ROS. We had quite a long discussion on that. So then the next day I thought, well, what do I do now? I thought, well, let me try to go back and take the original tutorial and try to install that on my laptop. And I think I got all the way through, and I think that one was giving me the same thing about it can't find the undefined reference to locale C-type pointer. So that didn't help. So I think I threw all that out and loaded the 1.8.19, which is the latest stuff. And then I went through the steps to do that, and I got all the way through on that one. And I came up with the exact same results there that I did the very first time I tried it. It says, I can't find your compiler at all. And that annoyed me. So then I moved on. And I said, okay, we'll go back and I'll try to do the version 2 again. And so I threw out everything on the computer and tried to load that one. And Bob had posted a video that said, it's here. I said I was going to do this. I may as well. Let's see, do that. So on the Slack channel, Bob posted this message saying, oh, by the way, you might want to look at this video. And this is a guy, his name's Alexander something, and he's got a whole bunch of videos there. And it says, how do you properly create Micro-ROS to Arduino Teensy interface and run ROS2 nodes on Arduino Teensy? And he's basically taking the same steps that everybody else is doing. And he very slowly goes through and tells you on each step how to do things. So I was following that, and I got all done. And I now had back to Arduino 2.3.4 loaded, and I had this one installed, the latest version of Teensy installer. And I kept telling myself, that's not going to work. So I got it all the point. I loaded everything up. I said, compile. And it came back and said, whatever the message. I think it had the undefined reference to locale C-type pointer. I thought, okay, well,
what was the host computer on that example? What computer was he running the Arduino IDE?
On mine or on the video? On the video,
on the video.
He's using Humble under he's running Humble and under 2204 is what he was running.
So
and my
an
laptop
x86 machine.
What's that?
An x86 machine?
Yeah. So it's whatever laptops are. The only thing that I've done, and the only thing I've done that's Raspberry Pi 4 is the one that failed. So I gave up on that. So everything else I was doing on a laptop. So it'd be x86 type stuff.
Got it.
So on his video, he said, he specifically said he has ROS 2204 and he's running Humble, which I don't think has anything to do with building the Arduino and building the code to put on your Teensy. So I don't think it matters what you have. And basically, I've followed his example that I have Foxy loaded as opposed to Humble. And I don't think there was any statements that have anything to do with your operating system. The original tutorial said when you do the patch, as part of the path, it said go out to Foxy or go out to whatever your version is. And I noticed on the one this guy put out, he said that just simply said main as the directory in the repository. It's going to go to main as opposed to Foxy or Humble or anything else. So that was the only reference that would have been operating system or ROS level dependent. So anyway, let's see, where was I? I went all the way through this guy's tutorial, and I thought, well, that's not going to work. And sure enough, I tried it. It didn't work. And I thought, okay, let me try the downgrading of the Teensy installer. So you go to your Teensy screen and you pull up the board manager, and it let's see what's loaded on this computer. I don't. Well, here's Arduino. This might be the old stuff. Yeah, it looks like it's gonna be the old one. Come on.
While that's coming up, the reason I asked about the architecture on his host machine is because um, a lot of my issues seem to be the actual C compiler, the version of the compiler, and where that compiler was physically installed. And I'm hypothesizing that an x86 machine and the OS might load one GCC versus, the ARM Raspberry Pi might load another GCC compiler. That's
Well,
just a guess.
after I poked at this stuff long enough, I think each one of these, because you got Teensy will load whatever they want, and Arduino loads whatever they want, and Micro-ROS loads whatever it wants. And that's what the problem seems to be, because Micro-ROS is saying, oh, you have to create the static library. You have to build that using the same compiler that you're now using under Teensy to do the compile there, or using under Arduino to run the compile there. So they apparently are loading compilers. And in fact, when you say, I want to downgrade from 1.59 to 1.57, messages come up and say, oh, you had the compiler version is 11.3.1, and I'm going to uninstall that. And then down below it says, now I'm loading the 1.57. It says, oh, I'm going to load the 5.4.1 compiler. So it's actually, at least at that level, it's actually, loading in the compilers that it wants. And that seems to be the problem. You have to match this stuff together. Nobody can seem to figure out how to do that. So yes, that's where the issue is. I don't think it has to do with your ROS version or what's actually installed on your computer, because each one of those packages then goes out and grabs the compiler it wants to do the pieces. And now that I know that, I might be able to, analyze and say, here, go to this directory and say, change this, and have it load the right stuff. And maybe that would fix all these problems that I'm having. Maybe I could run that then with the newest stuff, and it's not going to complain. So I pulled up the Arduino that's on here. This is the old stuff. This is 1.8.19. So this is not going to show you the thing I was going to show you. So on the newer stuff, there's some tabs on the left here. One thing's called Board Manager. You pull it up and you say search for Teensy, and there's a little block that'll say it currently has 1.59.0 installed, and then a little pull down box. I could if I knew where to look, I could probably find an example of that and show you that, but I didn't post it. No, I didn't post anything here. So anyway, there you can say, click on things, say uninstall 1.59, 1.59.0, and this is, what do you want to do now? You pull down a little box, and I say, click on 1.57.2 and say install that. And what was, I forgot why I was going down this path. So anyway, you can install it that way, but then it turns out when you do that, that blows away the directory where your platform.txt file is stored, and that's something to do with the main point is they say you have to patch that file, and what that means is it simply goes out to the repository and grabs the entire text file and rewrites whatever's on your computer, and they just put in one line saying go use the libraries out that we've stored into, use the static libraries we've stored into Arduino. And if you don't have that, then that brings up another problem when you compile. And then it comes back and says, one of the lines at the top says something about, this platform does not support preloaded libraries or something. I thought, well, that sounds like the platform stuff. I went and looked, and sure enough, when you uninstall 1.59, it deletes that entire directory on your laptop, and say install 1.57, it creates another whole directory with a brand new platform.txt. So you have to run this patch step again, which just updates that. So then after I got those two things, then it would run on my computer again. I could compile the publisher stuff. Now, one thing I ran into, which I thought was quite annoying, I think the first time I went through this and it all worked, it kept popping up, saying, oh, do you want to, there are upgrades to your libraries. Do you want to load those now? And the first time around, I thought, oh, I don't need any extra headaches. So I kept saying no. And this time around, when I was going through this one, every time I'd say that, I said, yeah, go ahead and load them. And one time I think the first one that came up, I said, yeah, go ahead and load it. And it was whining around about the the versions of Micro-ROS. It says, well, here I've got versions 2.07 iron, and then it said something about, it got down to the point, it said something about, here's a version 2.05 Foxy, and I'm going to replace that with version 3 of iron. And it was doing all this kind of stuff. So it was automatically manipulating it the way they wanted it. And it turns out later I found out it's not the way I wanted it. But anyway, it went through and did that. That was the first thing I noticed it was doing anything. So then I went through and it said downgrade to 1.57. And then I shut the Arduino down and brought it back up again. It says, oh, I've got updates to your libraries. Do you want to install those? And I didn't realize yet what it was doing to me. So I said, yes, install those. And it popped up and says, here, let me uninstall your 157. And it did all the steps for that. It said, let me install 159. So it just redid everything that I just gone through to downgrade the thing. And I thought, well, that's annoying. So then I went back again and did that, said downgrade again, which only takes 2 or 3 steps to do it. So I said, downgrade it back to the previous version that I know works. And it still wouldn't run. And I thought, well, let me go look at that patch thing. And that's when I found out the directory gets replaced. And I went to, so I ran the command that says replace that platform text file, and then went back into Arduino and said, oh, here, do you want me to help you out? And I said, no, don't. Stop helping me. And then I fired it up, and then it worked after that. So I was going to say, I was going to make a statement. And what I found out was, if you want this stuff to work, I'll tell you what I've got working. This is on a laptop, not using Docker anywhere. And the laptop happens to be running Ubuntu 2004 and ROS Foxy, which I don't think that has anything to do with anything I'm doing right now. And what I found was that if I load Arduino 2.3.4, which is the latest Arduino version, and then I load, then I have to load the Teensy Arduino 1.59, I think, because again, when you go to Teensy, that's the only thing that will show you. So if you load that one, and then you go through all the other steps to get the thing running, then you have to, once you get that, then you have to say downgrade it to the previous version of Teensy installer, and then you have to go patch that that file, what's it called, platform.txt. You patch that, then it will actually run. So that's the option. I found that if you run 2.3.4 Arduino and the 1.573 for Teensy installer, that stuff matches and the thing will actually work. So that's what I found out on that. I can't get anything to work with the older 1.8 stuff, because every time I run it, I have weird errors on that. Now, it could be that, you know, I did that. I was having a weird problem. Maybe if I would have got to patch that file again, maybe I could get the 1.8.19 to work also. But that's where I'm at right now. I felt myself very fortunate that I got it to work at all. And so eventually I'm gonna have to reinstall this anyway, just to, clean my notes up and reinstall it, say, yeah, do these steps and it should work, or do these steps and it worked for me. That's about as close as I can get on that.
And
So
can
that
you
was
just
my,
clarify?
so that was my, what's that?
I was just going to say, and can you clarify how you installed the latest version of Arduino? Did you use Snap and the application thing in Ubuntu, or did you do a manual install?
Somewhere it says do not use any Ubuntu installer. So they say, go to this web page on Arduino, and it says, oh, here's how you load the latest version. And then over on the box, on the side, they give you versions for Windows and for Mac OS and for Linux, and you pick the one you want. And that's another point where you got the option on Linux, you can load an app image. So it's like a compressed file or something. You put that on the computer and it runs everything from there. And later I thought, well, the modifications they're making probably have to go into that directory structure and change it. So I didn't think that app image was going to work. So I threw that out and downloaded what's a zip file. So you put that on your computer, you unzip it, it creates the fully expanded thing. And I didn't know if I could have used the other one. So I went to watch that guy's video that Bob had posted, and he was saying, he gives you the steps, says go out to the Arduino page and click on the one that says app image and download that to your computer. So that's what he was using. And it turns out when you put that on your computer and execute it, it actually creates a hidden file that's a Arduino 15. And that's where all your stuff that you change goes. So it turns out you can use the app image, and I'm not sure there's really a whole lot of, a whole lot of advantage one way or the other to doing it that way. But that's so that this latest one, I used the app image, and I installed it directly for the way Arduino tells it to do it. And there's various things. The tutorials will point you to a page and say, here, do this. And you got to be a little careful because that may not be, there may be extra steps or missing a step, or it's pointing you to a version that's not going to work. So that's just, still part of a journey. And so it's
Quite a
there, there's
journey.
there's probably some other tidbits in there, but as I go back through to write this down, maybe I'll think of those and then try to write up something that says, all these tutorials say to do this, but here's what I did and I found this works. So that might be a way to do that.
That'd be awesome if you could do that.
And then sometime Al can tell us how he got his he's using what's called Platform IO. He's got that figured out, and he thinks that's working. So one of these days he can explain that, and we'll see which one continues to work the longest. Because eventually you're going to turn it on. Well, it's not going to work because like Arduino is going to be trying to load updates on me, and if I foolishly click yeah do it, then it wipes some stuff out. But so far it hasn't been that hard to go back and fix it. So, and then eventually I got to figure out what do you do with Micro-ROS. The whole point was I want to get it running, and at this point I basically just want to use it to communicate between my big computer, which will either be a laptop or Raspberry Pi, and talk to a small board, which might be a Teensy or it might be, I don't know what it's going to be, but I need some way to talk to that. And from everybody says I could use ROS, I can use Micro-ROS to do that, but then they keep having all these other big claims about you can run nodes on your Arduino under Micro-ROS. I have no idea what they mean by that. So someday I'm going to have to figure out how this actually works. I suppose just actually set up an example and move messages back and forth, and then see what else I can do with it. So that's where I'm at.
Anything else?
I don't think so.
I'm going to share. So, I mean, in Slack, just like Jeff got his to work, and he had a couple of images of being able to get those examples to run. I was able to do that as well. But for me, how do I close that image? Sort of having a Slack maneuverability problem here. Close that thread, see if that gets it. So I ended up on the host using Docker. And again, Jeff is right. I don't think, well, I ended up using Docker on the host, running Foxy instead of Jazzy. And the hard part was to get it to compile. And somewhere I have the Platform IO stuff. I thought it was in this. Come on. Well, what's the fastest way to search for that? Scroll through a bunch of messages. Dun, 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 dun.
You might just be able to go to search and put it in platform and then have it tell you. If that's what you're looking for, it's the platform IO stuff.
See if that's the one. Yeah, this was just my, so I compiled the hex code for my Teensy on a Windows 10 machine. And in order to do that, I had to bring down, create a directory, bring down the Micro-ROS libraries, and then in the platform IO world, I had to define that library to hold the Arduino Micro-ROS code. And this is specifies the Teensy 3. I think I was using a 3.1 board. Yeah, it looks like it. And this is a special code for that board, and had to make some other really annoyingly defined, for me anyway, other build flags to actually get it to compile. And so that INI file is really an important file. This is just the sample publisher code, but it was all about getting that include statement to run clean, or to compile cleanly. And doing it off of the Windows 10 machine for me, and then going back and running it on, connecting the Teensy to a host that was using Docker IO Foxy, it worked. So it seemed to be a combination of the two, which was very, it felt good to get it to work, but it felt pretty clunky to get it to work. And all of some of the same problems that Jeff went through, I went through too, and just found this path for me. But anyway, that's just a quick run through of what's there. And that was just evidence to show, hey, I got a successful compile. I mean, I'm sure some of this stuff is useful to show what I was actually linking and how it was compiling. But anyway, that's a snapshot of how it got to work for me. Let's see here, more recently in the last week or so. Gonna find it. Yeah, this is my Miro board, and I've got a number of things on my Miro board. One of the things that I have here is I'm just sort of trying to physically lay out components that are going to be in my version 2.0 board, and I'm pretty set on that I'll use an RPi 5 and have a Teensy 4. I think that's a 4.1. And so I've been working through getting these components laid out. One of the components that I don't have on here yet is what's my GPS unit going to be, because I've here to date been using probably a 4-year-old GPS unit that I bought from China called a ComNav unit. And so I've been looking at different options, because that board is operating at 5 hertz and nobody's really using that in sort of the outdoor ROS agricultural world. So these are a number of units that I looked at from this outfit called NavSpark, and previously I had gotten a few of their units to try to figure out which one was sort of going to be the most interesting. And I have been pleasantly surprised with all of their boards, especially given the cost. I mean, Ardu Simple was probably the leading contender or the F9P are some of the most common ones. But this board, this 1172 RDP, caught my eye because it had this dead reckoning capability, and they'll have videos of them driving into a parking garage and losing GPS, but still being able to have, RTK-like accuracy or centimeter-like accuracy. So I started trying to figure out, how do I integrate wheel tick data into this board, and realized it only accepts distance information in a combined format. So it doesn't let you input left and right wheel tick data, which seemed odd to me, but I guess, nonetheless, if that's how you guys want to do it. So I had some interaction with their technical people, and, was trying to find other YouTube hits or GitHub hits or anybody else who'd been using that board, and really haven't had much luck with that. So I'm now leaning towards this u-blox. They have a M9DR, which is, an evolution of theirs, where they've got dead reckoning capabilities in this unit. And they've got a video where I linked over here, where, again, they do the same thing. They drive around a parking garage and show the accuracy level. They're able to maintain the accuracy level. And they did that in the video, apparently without any wheel tick data. And their unit as well, if you go through their data sheet, it just has like distance or speed wheel tick data, and you've got to combine it together, which means I'd have to take my sensors, feed it into the Teensy, come up with the average, and put it into this unit. So be that as all of it may, I'm probably leaning towards this unit as sort of the next generation for me to use as a GPS, both for a base and a tractor, for the tractor. So that's pretty much all I've gotten done as far as the tractor and ROS goes in the last week. So
On these boards that say they do dead reckoning, you might want to check to see if they will accept RTK, if they'll do RTK for you. You feed it correction data and gives you an accurate position. Because it could be that it just simply, it's combining your just normal GPS and your IMU, and so you don't lose your position, but it may not be an accurate position. So you keep that in mind before you buy it, that make sure that it will still do RTK. Or maybe you need
So
two different receivers, one to do RTK and then one that just the backup one that keeps track of your position by with the IMU.
yeah, it probably doesn't make sense to go through the video. In this video, I mean, he's a rep from their company. Let's see. He'll show the various statuses. Yeah, look at the test car he's got there, like a brand new Corvette. He walks through the various status changes, or you can't really see it there. It's, I think, called fixed mode. And he must be getting, his correction data from some service. I don't remember if he talked about how he got but he talks through the various fixed modes.
Before
And
before
which
you
is,
go on there, if you go down under settings and say display a higher resolution, the little gear down there, and then where it says quality, crank that up to say HD, and you might be able to read that stuff. Yeah, it's easier to read now. So the 3D GNSS is not like an RTK fix. That's just means they can see all the satellites, and it's going to be within, I don't know, 10 feet, 3 feet resolution
Yeah,
at that point.
yeah, I don't know.
And the argument people make is in a car, you don't need to know exactly where you are. You just need to be able to, stay in your lane, or, if you're just doing mapping, like you're trying to say drive from your house to the grocery store, you don't really care, exact measurements. So that's one reason why they do it this way.
Yeah, in this video, you'll see follow the breadcrumbs. He'll go around and do some figure eights because he says he's got to calibrate, um, or he takes time to calibrate the unit, and you'll see the changes in. Let's see if we can speed this up. And so he's talking about alignment status. He's going to make some figure eight turns. You can see up in the shows it's not calibrated. It gets a status code about making calibration. It gives you the calibration status. Then he goes back up to the fixed mode. And so I think he's at 3R plus dead reckoning / DGNS, I think is what he's now happy about. And so he's off to the parking garage. But down here on the single tick, it says not calibrated. So I don't think he must be lower left-hand corner. It says not calibrated on single tick. I'm guessing that's
Probably his wheel ticks, and he's, as you said, he's probably just not using them, and that's why it's not going to calibrate, because he's not feeding it wheel
yeah. He
information.
just earlier in the video you would see if you watched it, he just plops the antenna on top of his car and zip ties his GPS unit to the it says it's a reliable position, but the fixed mode is definitely not where it was. But you can see the breadcrumbs in the middle screen shows him going around a circle in the garage. But now the fixed mode, watches that, flips back and forth. Interesting. He's obviously not in clear sight, but now he is.
So we do have the issue here that playing an entire video like this, somebody might file a copyright claim on us because we're showing their stuff. I don't know. They seem to have some rule says if you're going to show a video, it has to be for commentary, and since you keep talking during the whole thing, maybe that will keep everybody happy. But we'll just see what happens on that.
Well, we're promoting u-blox.
Yeah, you can always claim that, but somebody's going to complain about whatever. I forgot we shouldn't be making comments on here about how things work. So, which we discussed that earlier, but anyway. So what's the other thing I showed?
Okay.
Oh, so all the stuff they're doing there. Keep in mind, if you run the robot localization, theoretically you could do the same stuff, but you're going to be doing it through ROS. So technically, you fire up one copy of robot localization and you feed in your wheel odometry and your IMU, and that creates something called, I think they call it corrected IMU or corrected odometry or something. And then you fire up a second copy of robot localization. Then you feed in the data from your GPS and you feed that corrected signal from the first node into there. And technically it should do the same kind of stuff. And I've never seen a comparison. It'd be interesting if somebody had a comparison between that like say that module you just looked at and says, here's what I'm getting with ROS using all the fancy localization stuff there. And also in the, if you're running that robot localization, I know you made the comment one time, seems like a real nightmare to configure, and it looks like it is, but it also gives you the option, say, if you want to go to your GPS and you just get, let's say, XY position from that, and then from your IMU, you might want to just pick up, say, rotational velocity, and then from wheel odometry, just keep track of maybe just get speed off that. So you can pick and choose what you want to use to feed into these filters. And I've never seen a write up on how well that works, and had somebody experiment with the different things to see what that will do. And the advantage you have there, if you're taking the signal from your RTK GPS, it's already RTK corrected, and it's what you have right now. Just feed that data into these filters, and hopefully it would do. It's smart. I think then it's supposed to be smart enough to switch if it loses GPS. It just keeps going with the the odometry and your IMU to keep track of where you're at.
I agree with you. That would be a really cool demonstration if somebody did that.
But I've just never had the ambition to try that, so that's why I've never done that.
I think there's probably only a few people on the planet who could configure that, all of those different ROS inputs. And I don't believe I'm one of them. So,
But there's probably people like if you go to ClearPath and they might have an example of doing this and tell you all that stuff. But I don't know if it's generic enough. They just said this is the way we did it, and it works for us. That's what you run into a lot of the time. So you don't get comparisons between different ways to do it, or you don't get comparisons with here. Let's turn off this input to the filter and see what it does. So that would be another thing to consider.
that's all for me this week. So hopefully, I'll finalize what I'm doing with the GPS and get one more sensor nailed down for my version 2 tractor. And given I'm in Texas at the moment, get some time on trying to physically fit a linear actuator onto my hydrostatic transmission. So that's the other thing I'm hoping to do here.
Did you give any more thought to taking that lawn tractor home with you, or was it back to the problem where you don't have any room to put it once you get it there?
Yeah, I think it's going to have to stay here in Texas.
Okay, I guess
I
I'm
am
done too.
okay. I'm done.
What were you gonna say?
Well, I was just going to comment on Terry's CAD CAM skills. What would be interesting is to try to create just a simple model of where the transmission sits in the lawn tractor, and get enough of the dimensions so that you could mock up something in CAD CAM so it would show you what maybe some of your clearances were and different designs. But we'll see if I take that on using Fusion 360.
On your two lawn tractors, are they physically identical except one is fuel injected and one is not? Is that the only difference, or
I
so,
believe so.
so if you made a
Certainly the
bracket to
motor
fit on one, you could probably move it to the other one and everybody would be happy?
that worked on the steering motor, so I suspect the frame size and some of those critical dimensions are all the same.
Okay,
That's it
I'm
for
done.
me.
Okay.